Antorus, what's going on? It's Preacher! And wow, the Mythic launch has been met with, what's the way? Mockery. Mockery, I think, is the term being used, especially by the general community. And it is the community perception. Been a big theme over Legion, certainly from content I've produced, is community perception can actually mean a hell of a lot. Word of mouth spreads like wildfire, especially around gaming communities and forums, and quickly we try and turn anything we can get our hands on into a meme. And the launch of Mythic this time around for Antorus has gone the way a few of us suspected it would go. Certainly if you watched our web show over the weekend, me and Andy, the main focus of the big topic we discussed there with a lot of you was the fact that Antorus seems to be undertuned. It seems remarkably simple already. And of course that's met with the usual things. It's like blah blah blah, Mythic Raiders doing this and that. Well, that wasn't really the case. In fact, a lot of pugs were getting through content as well, and it seemed to be smashing through. But Mythic will fix it. In fact, that's what many people were expecting, is that this time round Blizzard had tuned Mythic first and then would move on to turning it down for everything else. And that could kind of explain there's certain anomalies such as Argus being one of the easier bosses in there, even though it's the last boss on normal and heroic, with Agramar and certainly the Coven of Shivara being significantly more difficult. And we also said Blizzard would never buff that content because guilds have already cleared it. Now, I was wrong in the first instance because Blizzard have buffed the normal and heroic versions. Having done normal today, couldn't tell. One shot absolutely everything in our viewer pug. I'm doing heroic later tonight, and then I'll be stepping into Mythic. But of course, the main topic of conversation here is Mythic. So as it stands as of recording this right now, I'm actually going to refresh it right in front of me, just so I can be as accurate as possible. There are currently 3 guilds: Limit, the US guild from last night, Method, and Exorcist from Team EU, and Russia expects Russia, who are at 9 out of 11 with only 2 bosses remaining, a lot less actually than 24 hours into the launch of the raid. And this has got a lot of people in the community feeling very upset, despite many of them not doing Mythic. I think that should be an important point here. Are angry at how easy and soft Blizzard has gotten with Antorus. And of course, many people are looking for comment on this. Now, there's a few ways of looking at this. If you actually go into, and I want to give big shout outs here to Raider.io, they've been around for a while and they really have done some great work in tracking the progression of all the guilds this time round, including the Mythic Plus tournament they did recently as well. Looking at the way the top guilds have done things is actually very interesting because it is organization and class stacking. Like we haven't really seen this done this well. These are seriously seasoned and experienced guys when it comes to tackling extremely difficult content. And of course, the idea of the split run, if you're not sure what that is last week when Heroic and Normal were out, the guilds divide their main roster into little groups in order to basically give them an entire Heroic run in order to get as much gear as possible. So let's make it easy and say you were a rogue. You would be like the only person who's probably going to get Vanquisher tokens in that entire raid. Should Vanquisher drop, you might have 1 or 2, depending on how seriously you take your split running, and any rogue loot that would drop would entirely be yours. And then you do another heroic run for the other rogue, and then you do another heroic run for the other leather user, and you divide the raid up into these groups. Now, you're probably saying, doesn't that take a lot of groups? It does. It takes somewhere around 9 to 10 heroic runs. And then after that, yes, there's more. After that, what you'll do is you'll go in and you'll spend coins on particularly powerful items that haven't dropped in the runs you've already done. So you might want a specific trinket, for example. So in your first run, it didn't drop. Okay, so I'll coin it there. Didn't drop. What a bummer. So when everybody else is done, then you form more heroic groups where you're not actually getting boss loots, you're just killing them to coin things. And basically, what you're trying to do is defeat the entire heroic progression curve as fast as humanly possible. So you don't have to do that when it comes to Mythic. Now, of course, you will still do heroic, certainly with Antorus, when the Mythic comes out, because things can still Titanforge, there'll be loot that didn't drop despite your efforts, and of course the Pantheon trinkets, which you only get 1 chance at per week. looking at the way these guys have set them up, they set this race up. They took it extremely seriously, certainly the top guilds, and their setups are obscene. We have seen things like, we kind of suspected in the community that Coven of Shavara was actually going to be the cockblock. It's the noticeable step up in difficulty even on heroic. And looking at the raid setups, I'm going to link down below so you guys can check this yourselves. We saw things like Limit used 0 melee. They managed to pull a roster out of 4 Shadow Priests that were all geared between 949 and 953, and 5 Affliction Warlocks that were 949 to 955. They mixed in 2 Moonkins. One of them was 957 and a 947 Moonkin. And then the only other 2 DPS in the entire raid were 2 Hunters, who were 955 and 948 respectively. An entire group composition of ranged made up of just 4 specs. Think about that for a minute. That is 12 DPS made up of just 4 specs. There is not many guilds in the world that could potentially field a team like that. So this is what you're kind of looking at happening. A Method did something similar for their Coven of Shavara kill, in fact, breaking the mold this time round by using a single melee, 1 rogue. Everything else was kind of very similar when you look into it. They went with, if I just bring it up here, they had 3 Shadow Priests, 3 Affliction Warlocks, a Demonology Warlock, an Elemental Shaman, a Fire Mage, 2 Moonkins again, 1 Rogue, and again 2 Hunters. Again, trying to field as many ranged as possible, all to make the fight easier. Now, Exhausted did a little better. I think they have 3 melee in theirs. I believe they took some Warriors. Shoutouts to the Warriors. No Warriors, sorry. A Rep Pally, 2 Rogues, 2 Moonkins, 1 Mage, 4 Shadow Priests, 3 Affliction Warlocks. So what you can obviously see is the guilds that are crushing through Antorus are guilds that are able to field a raid of idyllic setup. Idyllic. Absolutely ideal for what this encounter demands. Does this encounter favor, even remotely, multi-dotting classes? Okay, we're just going to bring as many as humanly possible. That's going to make our life much easier in order to get around things like gear curves, any sort of gear checks like that, any dangerous moments that might occur for melee. Don't bring any melee. If they're a risk to our wiping, we'll bring as few as possible. And if we do bring some, we're going to bring ones that are able to get out of jail free via Cloak of Shadows or Divine Shield, for example, in Exhaust's case. But does that get out of jail free from the tuning of Antorus? That's the big question. I would say not. The only raid in Legion, we have had a raid that died this quickly, and that was, of course, Emerald Nightmare, which died within 18 hours of Mythic Emerald Nightmare being released. Now, that came with a defense that was touted by many across the community, is that Blizzard underestimated just how hardcore people would go with Mythic Plus. Mythic Plus was a brand new system. Of course, we had also no idea how prevalent Titan forging was going to be. So there was a reasonable chance, a very reasonable chance, that people entering Emerald Nightmare were in fact massively overgearing it by the time they stepped foot inside. Before they got their first boss drop, they were already way past the gear requirements in order to kill this in a reasonable time. And also, gear allows for way more mistakes. That's the big advantage of gear. It allows for more mistakes. Is that all that's happened, though? No, I don't think so. There's a few things that happened here, and Blizzard has basically give us, for the most part, what we asked for. Antorus doesn't have, seemingly any, from what we can see, stupid mechanics that are a minor mistake is an instantaneous wipe. And I mean that in terms of it's unrecoverable. It's just you're dead. That's it. Which we have seen in Helya, and we saw on several bosses in the Nighthold, and also we saw a hell of a lot in Tomb of Sargeras, which was just a very, very minor fleeting error by one player meant that you had to start again. And that was infuriating. And the raiding community called out saying, this isn't fun. It's not fun. And I still stand by that. It's not fun. It's not fun at all. That a mistake that might not even be caused by anything other than a little bit of lag or your internet connection randomly acts up, like it's happened to every single one of us, leads to a wipe for everybody else. That's not fun. If that person dies, we should be able to have the old college try at recovering this. It should be punishing for sure. But it shouldn't be just like, okay, wipe, go again. Is your internet connection all right? Blah, 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 blah. What this looks like to me is it's looking very easy for the very, 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 very top guilds. I still think it's going to take any other guild a reasonable amount of time to do this. Even someone like, I'm in like a World 200th guild now, and I still expect us to be doing this in a month or so. Easy. Just as we were with Emerald Nightmare. We didn't smash through Emerald Nightmare, and we certainly can't field a roster of this many people, and we don't do split runs, so we've still got quite a bit of gearing to get from Heroic and so on and so forth. And that'll be the case even more so for guilds that are either slightly above us and all the rest that are below us. That's going to be totally normal, and therefore I can expect a decent amount of raid time still to come out of Antorus, despite the memers jumping all over it. Do I feel it's a little undertuned? On the face of it, sure, it feels a little undertuned, but I'd also take away from what I can see is that this time round, Blizzard seems to have focused on mechanical stuff. It's raid coordination, it's raid taking part, raid adapting, raid adjusting to the situation, which I'm all for. I am all for that rather than his obligatory death beam that wipes you out instantaneously. I am far more in favor of mechanic heavy fights that are also allow the raid to communicate, talk about it, deal with it in a certain way, and if it does go wrong in some way, we can also recover from it. I think that's a much better style of raiding than, you got it wrong, you're all dead now, than that style. But the issue we have here, and this is why it's kind of funny, is for the last 3 raid tiers, Blizzard has taught us not to really think that way. They have taught us to be as super strict as humanly possible when it comes to dealing with mechanics. Now you add in the factor of a little bit of leeway there, and things start to look significantly easier. Missing a soul bomb, for example, on Argus can be recovered with some cooldowns and stuff like that. So if it's slightly not too far, it's not quite far away enough, things like that, it's not going to be the absolute end of the world. And that for me is a huge bonus. Has it translated into a bunch of raiders who have been trained to deal with even the slightest mechanic instantaneously because it's going to kill you, meaning that it nullifies a lot of mechanics? Potentially. Potentially. If you've been trained that touching a certain step will instantly chop off your leg, and then someone tells you, well, now you can stand on it, but it won't, it might prick your toe. Chances are you've been trained for so long, you're just not going to step on it ever, right? You're just not going to deal with that. And that makes things look a whole lot easier. I'm not playing devil's advocate here. I truly believe this is, it's certainly easier than Tomb of Sargeras Mythic was, but I'm okay with that. I personally was fine. I'm fine with an easier time than having to face the nightmare that was Fallen Avatar and Mythic Kill Jaden again. It was a absolutely laborious, nasty chore. And in the face of Mimas saying this game's easy while simultaneously asking when LFR is going to be released, that's exactly what I saw in some stream chats today. I'm okay with it. Meme away. The side effects of this, of course, is exactly what we talked about in the web show. That's from the Mythic side. That's the Mythic side. And the problem there is the community perception. Word of mouth spreading that World of Warcraft is a super, super easy game from people who have absolutely no context of what's going on. Now, I could be completely wrong. I might step in there tonight, and I will be doing Mythic tonight, and going, actually, this is a joke. I could be saying that. I'm looking at it from how I believe it appears on the face of it. But I could walk in there tonight and say, nope, this is actually a complete crock of shit. What an absolute disappointment. And I will update you if that is the case. But the community perception won't change regardless, because they're never going to step in and find out for themselves. A lot of the people won't do. But we'll find out. We'll find out for sure. The other side of it, though, which is the big concern, is that even though they've buffed Heroic, 2 things there. One, they've really buffed Coven of Shavara Heroic and Argus. This could mean that guilds that cleared Heroic last week don't this week. It's potentially going to happen. If they're a Heroic-only guild, they might run into it and go, what the hell? This isn't right. This isn't what it was like at all. And then they might struggle on content they've already defeated. This was a big problem in Mythic last tier with Mistress Sazine. A lot of guilds got past Mistress Sazine, and then they buffed it or fixed it, whichever way you want to look at it, the next week, and guilds couldn't get past it anymore. And that was a big problem because you're talking to a guild that's already done this content as you gave it to us. Why now is it suddenly more difficult? That's not right. And I agree, that's not right, but that is what they're doing. That is exactly what they're doing. So I feel a little uncomfortable. I've got to be honest. I don't think Blizzard should be doing that. I think if you released content in a certain way, and you can argue that you fixed it, but that's your mistake. You're now punishing the player base for that. So I'm sure people have different opinions on that, whether or not these changes even make a difference. For some people, they're telling me it didn't make a difference at all. It just meant that essentially we had to do it again. And that was it. We had to kind of do a little bit of relearning. The final part I want to talk about is that with the current seeming rush to get the allied races done on 7.35's PTR right now, if you're not aware, they've just started adjusting, or they've already sort of rushedly implemented the Thunder Totem and Suramar changes to house the High Mountain Tauren and, of course, the Nightborn. And it looks like they're going to become active very, very soon, and that looks like it's going to be to keep people busy. Now, it feels rushed to me. It feels like they probably wanted to delay that a bit longer, but they've quickly realized this is how it feels to me. You can call me a pessimist or whatever. That's fine. I'd love to see your opinions on it. But it feels to me that they've realized, oh shit, we fucked up Antorus. This is way too easy for even the normal and heroic player base. And that's the vast majority of players. That's the huge majority of players. And a lot of them are already done. We saw Heroic Argus was killed over 2,500 times in its first week. That's way more people than actually did kill Jaden Mythic at all through the entire tier. That's a lot of people who managed to get through that content on the very first week and are now probably thinking, we have a new expansion on the horizon. Gear's not that important. I've already killed the content I'm comfortable with killing, which is heroic. I have no interest in Mythic, no matter how easy you tell me it is. I'm not asked. So why the hell would I do this? Why? I'm not going to farm this because chances are I might re-roll. I don't really care about gear for leveling, and people are very quickly going to be, there's not much point in me doing this. And I think Blizzard's thought that's going to be a thing. A lot of people are saying are going to be thinking to themselves, why would I farm a raid instance to replace it with a clown suit as soon as BFA launches? But this is still my favorite game. You've kind of fucked me. I don't want to farm this raid for the next potentially 8 or 9 months when I cleared it in week 1. That's a very real problem. And it looks like leveling is the solution. Both of us in the office kind of agree that the leveling the allied races is where they're going to try and fix that. So maybe that's going to be enough for you, or maybe not. But my thoughts right now are this. My conclusions to this. It does feel like Mythic is undertuned. We are looking at the very real possibility, and at this point, I kind of feel like if this doesn't happen, it's because one of the bosses is bugged, like we saw with Avatar, is that this raid is going to be done by the time I wake up tomorrow morning, if not by the time I finish my raid this evening, and that's going to be it. I truly believe if Agramar Mythic dies, then I don't see Argus lasting that long. I really don't see Argus lasting that long, but we shall see. This is guesswork and speculation at best. I don't think that should be the case. I think for the finale, the final raid, we were expecting to get some time out of it. I think they kind of screwed up. It looks like they screwed up by the hot fixes they had to apply, or the fixes they had to apply to Heroic to make it more difficult. Been a long time. I don't think ever. I can't think of a single time that they went back retroactively and made a raid harder. I can't really think of a time they did that, other than specific cases like Mistress Azine, but overall trying to make a raid tougher the week after it has already launched. That's not something we've seen as far as I can remember offhand, off the top of my head. I've been thinking about it for a while. I can't think of a time that happened. Maybe you guys can educate me. And it's a very weird situation we've seemingly got ourselves into. I will update you tomorrow. I'll do another video. I'll record it tonight, immediately after I've done Mythic, and I'll try and get it out for you. So it might even be out this evening. If so, it'll be late on, but expect that tomorrow. Thank you very much for listening, guys. I'll see you again. Bye-bye.